The cliff path carved a scar through the mountain, its edges crumbling into a void where mist coiled like specters. Jagged rocks jutted upward, catching the last light like broken teeth. Kara's breath fogged in the chill, her eyes tracing the trail's curve, a ribbon of danger threading through pines. Paw prints marked the dirt, too deliberate for a stray, pressed deep, as if carrying a burden. The wind howled a low moan that rattled her bones, smelling of damp earth and distant storms. Below the valley yawned dark and unforgiving, mirroring the hollow in her chest. She knelt, fingers brushing the prints, their clarity a silent challenge. The mountain wasn't just a place, it was a witness holding tight to its truths. Kara's knees weakened, the flashlight beam trembling in her grip, like a leaf caught in the wind. She leaned against a jagged rock, its cold biting through her jacket, but she barely felt it. Inside the ache bloomed a hollow thing, vast as the valley below. Uncle Torrin's face flickered in her mind, his laugh echoing on these same trails, his hand steady on her shoulder during her first climb. Gone now, swallowed by a storm 5 years past, leaving her to patrol these paths alone. She pressed a palm to her chest, willing the numbness to hold, but it cracked, tears blurring the fog. Why did she keep coming back? To punish herself perhaps for not being there that night. Her breaths came shallow, ragged, the mountain's silence mocking her fragility. She slid down the rock, knees drawn up, the weight of absence pressing her into the earth, invisible chains she couldn't shake. A rustle stirred the mist, faint as a whisper, pulling Kara's gaze upward. There, on a ledge above a silhouette, emerged broad shoulders, pointed ears, a German shepherd's form etched against the fading light. His eyes gleamed steady and piercing, as if measuring her soul. He didn't move, didn't bark, just watched with an intelligence that sent a shiver down her spine. The moment stretched electric, promising answers to questions she hadn't dared ask. Then he turned, vanishing into the fog like a dream slipping away. Kara stood, heart pounding the air, thicker now with possibility. Something had shifted. The mountain held its breath. Kara's memories unfurled like the mountain paths she knew by heart, winding back to sunlit days when Uncle Torrin was her world. He'd hoist her onto his shoulders, his laugh rumbling like distant thunder, pointing out hidden trails and eagle nests. "The mountain speaks if you listen," he'd say, his calloused hand guiding hers over maps in their old cabin. She was 12 when he first took her, climbing, her small boots slipping on rocks, but his grip steady, pulling her up. Those years were golden, learning to read the wind-tracked deer, feel the earth's pulse. But the storm came like a thief 5 years ago, ripping him away on a routine patrol. Kara had begged to go, but he'd smiled, ruffling her hair. "Next time, kiddo." There was no next time. Search parties found nothing but his hat tattered in the ravine. The loss carved her hollow, guilt festering like an untended wound she should have insisted should have been there. Now in her mid-30s, the park guide uniform felt like armor, hiding the girl who still whispered his name to the wind, searching for echoes. Dawn cracked over the peaks, but Kara moved through it like a shadow, her routine a ritual of emptiness. She rose before light coffee, black and bitter in a chipped mug, staring at the cabin walls scarred with old photos, faded smiles mocking her solitude. Boots laced tight, she stepped out the door, creaking like a sigh, and began her patrol, checking trail markers, logging erosion, warning hikers of loose paths. Her radio crackled sporadically, voices distant as stars, but she kept responses clipped, building walls against connection. Evenings blurred into scrolling hiker forums on her laptop, eyes glazing over reports of the mysterious dog, a distraction from the void. The cabin echoed with silence, her bed-cold dreams haunted by storms. Numbness was her shield, a frozen lake over grief, but cracks formed small hesitations, like pausing at Torrin's favorite overlook, whispering questions to the abyss. Rune padded through the mist-shrouded cliffs, his coat matted with the scars of forgotten battles, white lines etching his flank like lightning frozen in fur. Lean muscle rippled beneath, honed by years of solitary survival, but his ribs pressed against skin, a testament to lean winters and hollow nights. His paws, calloused and cracked, gripped the jagged rocks with the precision of a climber born to it, each step a silent vow against the wind's howl. Eyes the color of storm clouds scanned the horizon, alert yet burdened, carrying the weight of memories that clawed at his mind like thorns. Flashbacks came unbidden. Warm hands, Torrens ruffling his ears during training sessions, commands sharp but kind teaching him to navigate the treacherous paths to scent danger in the fog. Good boy Rune Torren would murmur his voice a anchor in the chaos of drills, forging a bond deeper than blood. But the storm had shattered it. Thunder cracked like whips rain lashing as Torren slipped on the edge, his cry swallowed by the gale. Rune had lunged teeth, grazing fabric, but the pull was too strong. Torren vanished into the abyss, leaving Rune howling into the void, betrayed by the mountain he'd trusted. Days blurred into survival, scavenging berries, dodging predators, his loyalty twisting into a fierce instinct to guide others from the fate that stole his handler. Hikers spoke of him in whispers, a phantom shepherd appearing from shadows to nudge them from crumbling ledges, his gaze piercing as if pleading, "Not you too." Yet alone he curled in hidden crevices, whining softly the grief, a constant ache, his purpose, a flickering flame against the encroaching dark. He wasn't just a dog, he was a sentinel of loss, his vigil a quiet rebellion against abandonment. In the quiet hours before dawn, Kara traced fresh paw prints circling her cabin larger than a coyote's, deliberate as a map drawn in dirt. She paused, breath-catching, feeling the invisible thread pulling her toward the unknown. Rune watched from a distant ridge, his form a shadow among pines, ears pricked toward the faint light spilling from her window. Their worlds brushed like ghosts, Kara's patrols echoing Torren's old routes, Rune's paths mirroring the ones he'd once trod with his handler. Shared loss wove between them. Torren's absence, a chasm in Kara's heart, a phantom limb in Rune's instincts. She'd sit on her porch staring into the fog, her mind replaying the storm's fury, guilt coiling like vines. Rune in his hidden lair would lift his head at the wind's shift, scenting her solitude, his whine swallowed by the night. Neither sought the other yet, but parallels deepened her numb routines, a cage his vigilant roams, a search for purpose. A dropped glove near the cliff hers drew him closer one evening, sniffing the fabric laced with her scent, stirring echoes of Torren's touch. Kara found it later paw-marked, a subtle sign that pierced her isolation. Trust hovered fragile as mist, an unspoken recognition blooming in the emptiness they both carried. Thunder growled low over the peaks, the sky splitting open as rain hammered the cliff path like accusations. Kara pushed through the deluge, her jacket's slick flashlight beam fracturing in the downpour. Hikers' distress calls crackled on her radio, lost in the fog, voices edged with panic. She crested a ridge, and there he was, Rune, the German shepherd, his fur-plastered dark-standing sentinel amid the chaos. He moved with purpose, nudging a huddled group toward a safer ledge, his barks cutting through the wind like commands. Kara froze, heart slamming. His ribs jutted sharp under wet fur eyes, wild yet focused, a survivor defying the storm. Lightning flashed, illuminating scars on his muzzle, and in that instant she saw not just a dog, but a mirror, broken, enduring. The hikers followed him blindly, safe in his wake, but Rune faltered, a limp, betraying exhaustion. Urgency surged in her chest, the storm's fury mirroring her own rising pull, to intervene to save what the mountain threatened to claim again. Kara's boots sank into mud, her mind a whirlwind as Rune turned his gaze, locking onto hers through sheets of rain. Approach him. The thought twisted her gut. Logic screamed no, a stray in this wild could bite, could flee, could drag her into another loss. She'd built walls for a reason, Torren's disappearance had taught her. Caring meant shattering. But his whine pierced the storm, soft and pleading, as he limped closer to the hikers, shielding them with his body. Empathy clawed at her, those eyes haunted like her own, begging for a chance she'd denied herself. What if he vanished like Torren? Her hands clenched, internal argument raging, walk away, stay numb, or risk the crack in her armor. Rune paused, head tilting, a subtle sign that tipped the scale, compassion winning over fear, pulling her forward despite the tremble in her limbs. Kara's hand shook as she reached into her pack, pulling out a soaked energy bar, crumbling it in her palm like an offering to the storm gods. Rain stung her eyes, but she knelt slowly, mud seeping through her knees, the ground cold as regret. "Hey, boy," she whispered, voice cracking against the wind's roar, her heart a drumbeat of doubt and resolve. Rune's stiffened ears flattening his body a coiled spring of mistrust, but his nose twitched, scenting the food amid the chaos. She extended her arm inches at a time, internal whispers urging retreat. What if he snaps? What if he runs? But the pull was stronger, a tide dragging her from numbness. He stepped forward, hesitant pause sinking into the muck, his eyes never leaving hers, a silent interrogation. The bar vanished from her hand in a gentle nip, no teeth grazing skin, just the brush of wet fur against her fingers. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the moment like a flash of fate, messy and raw, her jacket torn on a rock, his limp more pronounced, but irreversible. She exhaled the air thick with petrichor and possibility, the first thread of commitment weaving between them, fragile as spider silk, yet unbreaking. With the hikers safe on firmer ground, Kara turned back to Rune, her voice steadying like the eye of the storm. "Come on, let's get out of this," she murmured, clipping a makeshift leash from her belt. Old rope frayed but strong to his collar, hidden under matted fur. He resisted, at first planting paws, a low growl, rumbling like distant thunder. But her gentle tug, paired with soft words, coaxed him along the path. The cabin loomed through the rain, its lights a beacon in the gray, and she pushed open the door, warmth spilling out like a held breath released. Rune hesitated on the threshold, nostrils flaring at the sense of wood smoke and solitude, his body trembling not just from cold. She knelt again, unclipping the rope, offering a blanket folded by the fire space, not force. He stepped in, circling warily before collapsing in the corner, eyes half-lidded but watchful, water pooling around him like shed tears. Kara sat across the room, heart aching with the echo of Torrens' lessons, trust earned, not taken. In the flickering firelight, their gazes met a silent pact, forming her promising shelter, him allowing it. The storm raged outside, but inside a fragile bond took roots, delving into shared shadows, whispering of healing yet to come. Morning light filtered through the cabin's frost-laced windows, casting long shadows that danced like wary ghosts across the wooden floor. Rune lay in the far corner, his body a tight curl of black and tan fur, eyes half open, but unblinking, fixed on Kara as she moved about the room. She poured coffee with deliberate slowness, the steam rising like unspoken questions, her glances toward him brief, respectful. He didn't stir, didn't wag his tail. Only a low rumble escaped his throat when her footsteps ventured too close, a warning etched in gravel tones. The air hummed with tension, thick as the mountain fog outside each of them, islands in a sea of silence. Kara set a bowl of kibble midway between them. Not pushing, not invading space, was the only currency she offered. Rune's nostrils flared, scenting the food, but he remained statue still, his scars catching the light like maps of old betrayals. Inside, Kara's thoughts churned. He's like me, walls up, trusting nothing. She sat at the table, sipping her drink, the mug warm against her palms, a small anchor in the chill. Hours passed in this standoff, the clock's tick a metronome of patience. Rune shifted once, a paw twitching as if testing the air, but retreated back into his coil. Kara whispered to herself, "Give him time," echoing Torrens' old advice on taming wild things. Outside wind whistled through pines, mirroring the guarded whispers in her mind, fear of rejection, of another loss. Yet she didn't force it, didn't call him over. Instead, she read reports on her laptop, stealing peeks at his watchful gaze. As dusk crept in, Rune's eyes softened a fraction, the growl absent when she refilled his water. It was progress infinitesimal, like cracks in ice before spring thaw. Their silence spoke volumes, neither initiating, both assessing the cabin, a fragile arena where trust might someday bloom from the ashes of their shared isolation. Kara lay awake that night, hearing his steady breaths, feeling the weight of his presence, a sentinel in the dark, mirroring her own vigilant heart. The cabin's fire crackled softly, flames licking logs like tentative tongues, casting a warm glow that pushed back the evening chill. Kara noticed Rune favoring his left paw, a fresh gash from the storm's debris, weeping slightly red against his dark fur. She hesitated, kit in hand, antiseptic bandages, knowing one wrong move could shatter the fragile piece. He'll bolt, her mind warned, but the sight of his pain tugged at her, echoing the ache in her chest from Torrens' absence. Slowly she approached, kneeling a safe distance away, her voice a murmur, "Let me help, boy." Rune's eyes narrowed, body tensing like a bowstring, but he didn't flee, only watched, breath shallow, as if recognizing the mirror of his wounds in her gentle tremor. She extended the cloth soaked in saline, the scent sharp in the air, and waited, heart-pounding like distant thunder. Moments stretched silent but for the fire's pop until Rune extended his paw slightly, a concession born of exhaustion or perhaps intuition. Kara cleaned the cut with feather-light touches, her fingers brushing fur matted with old blood, each stroke uncovering scars that whispered of battles fought alone. Inside her thoughts swirled, this pain it's ours, abandonment's mark. Rune winced once, a soft whine escaping, but held still, his gaze locked on hers, vulnerability flickering like the flames. The bond deepened in that quiet act, unspoken wounds, aligning her grief for Torin, a shadow to his loss of handler. She wrapped the bandage, securing it loosely, and retreated, leaving him space to process. Rune licked the dressing tentatively, then settled eyes softer, observing her from afar with a new wariness tempered by gratitude. The room felt less empty, their shared suffering, a bridge-silent presence weaving threads of connection in the hearth's warm light. Rain pattered against the cabin roof, a rhythmic murmur that stirred restless dreams in the dim afternoon light. Kara sat by the window, a forgotten knife slipping from her hand to clatter on the floor, sharp metallic echoing like a gunshot in the quiet. Rune's head snapped up from his corner ears, flattening, a low whimper escaping, as his body flinched, eyes glazing with distant terror. The sound triggered a cascade in Kara's mind, flashbacks of Torin's lessons on the trail, his knife carving, whistles from branches, laughter cutting through the pines. "Steady hand, Kara," he'd say, but now the memory twisted storm clouds, gathering his figure, slipping away into the ravine. She blinked, shaking it off, but noticed Rune's tremble, his own ghosts rising. In his gaze she saw echoes, Torin's voice commanding heel during climbs, the dog's loyalty unbreakable until the gale's betrayal. A thunderclap outside jolted them both, Rune recoiling as if struck, Kara's heart racing with shared panic. She whispered, "It's okay, not just to him, but to herself," the words bridging their pains. The knife lay between them, a catalyst for recognition. Small gestures like this tying their fractures. Rune relaxed fractionally, no longer flinching, instead pausing to meet her eyes, acceptance flickering like a candle in wind. Their bond strengthened silently, flashbacks, weaving a tapestry of mutual understanding, turning isolation into a shared path forward. Sunlight pierced the cabin's gloom the next morning, golden shafts dancing on the floor like invitations to forgotten joy. Kara stepped outside, the air crisp with pine and earth, a fallen leaf skittering across the porch in the breeze. Rune followed hesitantly to the threshold, his tail low but curious, watching as she tossed the leaf playfully, a rare smile cracking her guarded face. It caught the wind twirling and something shifted. Rune's ears perked, a faint wag stirring his tail as he lunged forward, paws batting at the fluttering prize. Kara laughed, the sound rusty but genuine, bubbling up from a well she'd thought dry, echoing off the trees like a release. The cabin, once a tomb of silence, warmed with this spark. Rune's eyes brightening, his movements less rigid, chasing the leaf with tentative grace. She knelt, offering a treat from her pocket, and he took it gently, tongue brushing her fingers, a soft warmth spreading through her veins. Inside by the fire that evening, Rune inched closer, not touching but near enough for his heat to mingle with hers. Kara's thoughts softened. He's thawing me too. Small gestures accumulated, shared meals where he ate without haste, a sigh as he settled nearer the hearth. The space hummed with emerging comfort, joy, flickering like embers, transforming their guarded world into one laced with possibility. As night fell, Rune's tail thumped once at her voice, a rhythm of relaxation, the first true spark igniting hope in the shadows of their pasts. Twilight draped the cabin in soft blues, the fire's embers glowing like dying stars, casting flickering shadows that played across Rune's fur. Kara sat on the worn rug knees, drawn up staring into the flames, her mind a whirl of unearthed memories. Torin's voice fading in the storm, now mingled with Rune's steady presence. She hadn't noticed him move at first, his paws silent on the wood, but then he was there inches away, his breath warm against her arm. Heart stuttering, she froze afraid to shatter the moment her internal monologue a plea. "Don't pull away, please." Rune hesitated, ears twitching, then leaned in his head, resting heavily on her knee, the weight a surrender that sent tremors through her. His eyes, once guarded storms, now softened to quiet pools reflecting the fire's light, as he let out a deep sigh, body relaxing against her. Tears pricked Kara's eyes, hot and unbidden, spilling over as she reached out tentatively, fingers threading through his fur, soft despite the scars, warm like forgotten sunlight. He didn't tense, didn't retreat. Instead, he nudged closer, a lick brushing her hand, salty and forgiving. Moonlight sliced through the cabin's curtains, casting ethereal patterns on the floor, but peace shattered as Rune bolted upright, ears pricked like antennas tuning to danger. His body went rigid, a low growl vibrating from his chest, eyes fixed on the window where fog pressed like a veil. Kara stirred from sleep, heart quickening at his alertness, tail-stiff hackles rising in silent warning. Outside, the wind carried faint echoes, a crunch of gravel, distant but deliberate shadows shifting among the pines like ghosts from forgotten storms. Rune paced to the door, nose twitching at the crack, his primal instincts flaring, scenting something familiar, tainted with threat. Kara whispered, "What is it, boy?" But her voice trembled, mirroring his unease. Memories of Torin's last night flickered the mountain's betrayal fresh. The tension built, subtly, air thickening with unspoken dread. Rune's stillness a harbinger as he stared into the dark, growling at phantoms only he could sense. Echoes of past trauma resurfaced in his posture. Flinched muscles recalling abandonment, foreshadowing a storm, not of weather, but of resurfaced sins. Dawn broke with a deceptive calm sunlight filtering through pines as Kara opened the cabin door, Rune at her side, his posture alert but relaxed. A figure emerged from the trail. Mason the photographer, his camera slung over a shoulder, smile flashing white against tanned skin. Morning heard about the hero dog, he said, voice smooth as polished stone, eyes darting to Rune with feigned admiration. Kara nodded warily, her internal monologue churning charming, but something's off, too eager. Rune's reaction was immediate, hackles rising, a deep growl thundering from his chest lips, curling to bare teeth in protective fury. He positioned himself between them, body a shield. Instincts screaming of danger rooted in old wounds. Flashbacks assaulted Kara Torin, warning of outsiders exploiting the mountains, his voice fading into Rune's snarls. Mason stepped back, laugh forced, "Whoa, easy boy," but his eyes hardened, a mask slipping to reveal calculation. Rune lunged slightly, restrained by Kara's hand, his aggression unmasking the threat Mason's photography, a cover for smuggling routes tied to Torin's disappearance. Emotions flooded Kara's, panic rising, shouting back off as Rune's barks echoed violence from the past. The air crackled with revelation, maternal protectiveness surging in Kara, for Rune recognition dawning. This man carried the scent of betrayal. Mason retreated, but the explosion lingered, both human and dog reeling from the tidal wave of resurfaced trauma, trust tested in the glare of deceit. Adrenaline pulsed through Kara's veins as Rune tugged at her sleeve, his whine urgent, pulling her toward the cliff's hidden paths. "What is it?" she breathed, following his lead through mist-shrouded trails, heart hammering like storm drums. Mason's shadow loomed in her mind, his earlier retreat. A feint she sensed him trailing, camera hiding more than lenses. Rune's pace quickened, paws sure on treacherous rocks, guiding her to a narrow crevice veiled by vines, the hidden cave, its mouth yawning like a secret grave. Inside, torchlight flickered on walls, etched with echoes. Torin's old gear scattered, a rusted knife, maps torn, and faded signs of a struggle frozen in dust. Kara's breath caught, knees buckling as flashbacks crashed Torin's last patrol, whispers of smugglers preying on the remote cliffs. Sirens wailed in the distance as authorities hauled Mason away, his curses fading into the cave's echo, leaving Kara and Rune in a hush, broken only by their ragged breaths. She slumped against the damp wall. Torin's gear clutched to her chest like a relic, regret flooding her. Why hadn't she seen the signs sooner? Rune limped to her side, his fur bloodied from the scuffle, but he pressed close, a whine soft as apology. Silence enveloped them, thick and healing, as she buried her face in his neck, tears mingling with his damp coat. Physical separation loomed in her mind. Could she keep him safe now with threats exposed? But he leaned harder, refusing the gap. In that quiet trust reaffirmed her hand on his flank, steadying his tremble, his gaze promising vigilance. The cave, once a tomb of secrets, now felt like closure. Torrens' fate unveiled, Mason's betrayal ended. Kara whispered, "We're okay," a silent vow etching into their bond mutual protection, no more alone. As they emerged into fading light, Rune walked pressed to her leg, a promise of safety, sealing the traumatic chapter, their steps synchronized in quiet resolve. Days blurred into uneasy calm after Mason's arrest, the mountain's peace, a fragile veneer over simmering dread. Kara patrolled the cliffs with Rune at her heel, his ears swiveling at every rustle, body language, a barometer of unrest, tail-stiff hackles subtly rising at shadows that danced too erratically. Whispers from rangers hinted at loose ends, Mason's accomplices, vengeful ghosts, lurking in the fog-shrouded trails. One evening, as sunset bled red over the peaks, Rune froze mid-step, nose twitching toward the wind, carrying faint scents of unfamiliar sweat and metal. Kara's skin prickled, her internal monologue racing, "Not over yet." Subtle signs mounted, a snapped twig echoing unnaturally, boot prints fresh in mud where no hikers roamed, birds scattering from pines as if fleeing an invisible predator. Rune's low whine pierced the dusk, his eyes scanning ridges with watchful intensity, instincts flaring like alarms. She gripped her radio fingers, trembling unease coiling in her gut as distant figures flickered on the horizon, silhouettes too purposeful, stalking their sanctuary. The air thickened with anticipation. Every sound amplified, gravel shifting under stealthy feet, Rune's breaths quickening in sync with her pulse. Watchfulness consumed them, the cliff's edge, a metaphor for their precarious bond, danger building like a gathering storm, unseen but palpable, drawing them toward an inevitable clash. Fog clung to the cliff like a shroud as Kara and Rune ventured onto the narrow path, the air heavy with the scent of impending rain. Subtle signs erupted into chaos. Shadows materialized into figures, Mason's accomplices' faces hardened by desperation, blocking the trail with menacing stances. "You ruined everything," one snarled, advancing with a glint of metal in hand, their intent clear revenge for the exposed smuggling ring. Kara's pulse thundered, backing toward the edge, the drop yawning below like an open maw. Rune's growls escalated to barks, fierce and unyielding, his body a barrier between her and the threat. A shove came sudden, Kara stumbling, rocks crumbling underfoot in a miniature avalanche that trapped her, leg pain shooting like fire. The danger crystallized, life or death, the cliff's precipice mirroring her inner brink, imminent loss if they faltered. Rune lunged, teeth bared, forcing a momentary retreat, but the men circled one, grabbing for Kara's arm, the struggle physical and raw. Her mind screamed Torrens' name, flashbacks of his fall, blending with the present peril, collapse threatening, as the ground shifted again. The confrontation peaked, explicit and unavoidable, wind howling their dirge, every breath a fight against the void. Pinned against the crumbling edge, Kara's world narrowed to the snarls and shouts, her leg throbbing in the rock's grip, fear coiling like vines around her heart. The accomplices closed in one, raising a makeshift weapon. The threat, visceral, ended here, silenced the witness. Rune's eyes met hers in a flash, wild yet resolute, and in that gaze she saw the choice: protect or perish. Adrenaline surged. She wrenched free a loose stone, hurling it with a cry that echoed Torrens' strength, striking one assailant's knee, buying precious seconds. But it was Rune who transformed tension into action, lunging with primal fury, teeth sinking into fabric and flesh, a whirlwind of loyalty driving the men back. Kara scrambled up, grabbing Rune's collar, not to pull him away, but to stand with him, her voice a command. Together, she shoved the nearest attacker, balance teetering on the brink, emotional resolution flooding her. No more running from lost, commit to this bond. Rune's barks turned triumphant, his defense a mirror of her resolve, the pair a united force. One man slipped on loose gravel, tumbling harmlessly down a slope. The other fled into the fog, defeated by their synergy. Panting, Kara dropped to her knees, embracing Rune, tears mixing with dirt. The decision to protect each other, sealing their fates, transforming peril into unbreakable alliance. the cliff's edge now a threshold crossed. The cabin door creaked open, admitting Kara and Rune into the dim sanctuary, the mountain's hush following like a gentle shadow. Adrenaline ebbed slowly, leaving her limbs heavy. Each step a deliberate placement on the worn floorboards. Rune limped beside her, his fur matted with dirt and dried blood. But his tail gave a faint wag, a soft reassurance. She eased onto the couch, the fabric cool against her skin, and he settled at her feet, head resting on paws, breaths deepening into rhythm. Minimal words passed, none needed. The air hummed with survival's quiet symphony. Kara reached for the first aid kit, her movements languid, unwrapping gauze with fingers that paused, reflecting on the cliff's brink. She tended his scratches. First antiseptic sting, drawing a brief whimper, then her own bruises, the ritual a meditation. Long sentences of thought unfurled in her mind. Torin's loss, once a storm, now a fading echo in this fragile peace. The fire crackled lowly, casting golden pauses on walls, time stretching as they decompressed bodies and souls, exhaling the crisis. Outside wind whispered through pines, a lullaby signaling return to safety, the cabin enveloping them in its warm, unspoken embrace. Days wove into a steady tapestry of recovery, the cabin a cocoon where Kara and Rune mirrored each other's, mending their bond, a silent current flowing through shared routines. Mornings began with slow walks along safer trails, Rune's limp easing with each step, his nose twitching at dew-kissed grass, while Kara's strides grew firmer, the cliff's terror receding like mist under sun. Sensory details anchored them, the crunch of leaves under paws and boots, the earthy scent of pine mingling with coffee's bitter warmth, breaths sinking in the crisp air. Back inside, small actions built layers, Kara offering kibble from her palm, Rune accepting with a gentle nudge, his tongue rough yet tender against her skin. He followed her now, shadow-like, from kitchen to porch, lying close during evenings by the fire, his warmth seeping into her side like balm on old wounds. Emotions intertwined. Her glances met his steady gaze, eyes that saw beyond scars reflecting back, her grief turned to quiet strength. Over time, the healing deepened, Rune, eating heartily, tail wagging at her voice. Kara smiling at his playful rolls in the yard, laughter bubbling soft and genuine. Interwoven behaviors spoke volumes. He'd nuzzle her hand during moments of doubt, pulling her from reverie. She'd scratch behind his ears, easing his tremors from past storms. The tempo was unhurried, a steady pulse like a heartbeat stabilizing their recovery, a duet of gestures, leaning in, staying near, breathing as one. Torin's memory lingered not as pain, but as foundation, his lessons alive in their unity. As weeks passed, the bond solidified, sensory-rich and profound, two souls weaving wholeness from fragments, eyes that truly saw each other in the light of mutual rebirth. Sunlight gilded the cliff path as Kara and Rune stepped out together, the wind a gentle caress rather than a howl, carrying scents of renewal. Side by side they walked, strides matching in effortless harmony, her hand brushing his fur in rhythmic assurance. Rune paused at the edge, eyes locking with hers, deep trusting pools reflecting shared storms weathered. She knelt, breath mingling with his fingers, tracing the scar on his muzzle, a map of battles won. In that intimate gaze, fear dissolved. He leaned forward, resting his head against her chest, a quiet surrender that released the last shadows of guilt. Kara smiled, tears tracing silent paths, the mountain, witnessing their rebirth, no longer edges of despair but horizons of home.